der Livestream der Nürburgring Langstrecken-Serie. Präsentiert von Falkenreifen.
Herzlich willkommen zur Nürburgring Langstrecken-Serie.
Welcome to the Nürburgring for the NLS, the Nürburgring Langstrecken-Serie.
Und jetzt ist das Rennen freigegeben. The red lights are out now. Fans sind wieder da.
I would think that's very, very close.
Jetzt kommt er ran, zieht sich ran.
It's day two of the Red Bull Formula Nürburgring, the festival on the Nordschleife in early autumn. 2 6-hour NLS races combined effectively into the same weekend, although they are judged to be entirely separate races this year, unlike the running of the equivalent event in 2022. So we had the 63rd edition of one race yesterday, which was the ADAC ACAS Cup. We're actually going sort of back in time today because it's only the 62nd edition today of the ADAC Reinoldus-Langstreckenrennen. But nevertheless, with the thick end of, over half a century of history for both of these races, NLS 6 and NLS 7 are combining to produce 12 hours worth of racing for something like 23 different classes up and down the order. There have been one or two changes in the entry that we will delve into in more detail in a second. But first of all, I'm being very rude. The introductions. I'm Johnny Palmer. Over this side of the commentary booth is Peter Snowden. If you were tuned in yesterday, you will recognise our voices. And are you suitably refreshed, Snowy? Because it was quite a late finish last night, 9:30 to see the checkered flag. And we're going to be starting again midday local time. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
Fresh as a daisy, ready to go. We said 6 hours of exciting racing on the campus that is the Nordschleife. Could it be repeated? Yes, I absolutely guarantee it can be today. It was an extraordinary race yesterday. This circuit, these teams, the organisers, the whole collective never ceases to amaze me, Johnny. It has all the capacity to... How is 6 hours of racing going to be exciting all the way through? But they seem to do it every time. Whoever writes their script, give them a pay rise.
That's just clever regulations, but it's also encouraging entrants that want to take part in these races month in and month out. There are, in fact, 9 of them through the course of the year, and they're spaced not quite evenly because we've had something like a 2-month gap since we were last racing. Also, for a 6-hour race, this extended distance in NLS racing could catch on, you know. I'm almost forgetting that the standard length is 4 hours, but teams, I think, do enjoy the extra challenge. Yes, this is billed as a 12-hour race. Last year, it was a true 12-hour race in that the cars went into Parc Ferme on Saturday night. The gaps, theoretically, were retained into Sunday morning. This one is slightly different. So if you had a mare on Saturday, as long as your team are prepared to put in a very late night, you can fix a car up. I'm thinking actually the number 5 Audi that we never exactly got to the bottom of Vincent Kolb's incident, but he had a whack with one of the BMW M240i's, which seemed to pop the rear screen on the Audi and also did massive damage to the rear left suspension. And well after the checkered flag last night, the team were still working on that car, so goodness knows what time they were done.
Yeah, a surprising incident. As you say, Johnny, we didn't really get to the bottom. We just saw the aftermath, i.e. the car stopped at the side of the track with relatively little damage. I was in the rear wing, everything was all straight, but you were the first to spot the rear window was missing, so obviously something had flexed in the bodywork there, taking some kind of whack. Then we could see the reference on the left rear suspension had significantly more toe out than the engineers would prefer on that car, put it that way. So it would have turned. All the left-handers would have been brilliant. The right-handers would have been slightly more challenging, I suspect. But it's, in fact, right on screen, there it is now, the number 5 Audi with Christian Kolb and Frank Stippler sharing that car. Great to see it out again. Sad not to see the Falcon cars out again, the 2 Porsches that you said yesterday, quite rightly in our pre-show this very time yesterday, that the Porsches didn't seem to be that far up the grid as you would have expected, but it was a very unrepresentative qualifying yesterday morning because they were full of code 6. You know, this morning's was less so I think it is a little bit more representative. But Falcon that were 2nd and 3rd yesterday, not taking part in today, and again haven't got to the bottom of that. David Pittard was second in the number 3 car, or one of the drivers in the number 3 car. I did message him last night, and he very rudely hasn't replied yet. So Pittard,
Terrible.
Up your game and get on the blower, my friend. Find out why. Want to know why Falcon aren't taking part today?
I cannot believe that Falcon would not have been up for it. They're 2 very smart cars, got a really good result. But is it driver availability? Do their drivers need to be somewhere else? Do they need to be travelling to another part of the world, perhaps? We earlier on in the season, that was at the start of the year, the ROWE team only had 2 drivers across 2 cars, if you remember, and we had a sort of slightly bizarre NLS 1, I think it was NLS 1, where they actually parked their sister BMW after the first stint because they didn't have enough drivers to do 2 driver changes, and completely focused in on the other car for the majority of the race before, at the end, we saw both cars come out again to finish things off. But it may be as simple as the two drivers in one car class, Bachler and David Pittard, as you've mentioned. We also had Dennis Fetzer and Martin Raginger. Are they required in another location and therefore could only commit to Saturday? I am speculating, so perhaps we should move on there. But there should be something like 91 cars taking part in today's race. So there has been a bit of a drop-off. Only 1 car has not managed to qualify. That doesn't mean we won't see it in the race, but the 500 BMW F30 for the GT Tyre Motorsport by WS Racing team, their car didn't even get out for qualifying, or it had a drama on its out lap effectively because there were no times recorded whatsoever for car 500. We saw 5 cars not able to qualify yesterday, and the most of them, I think, did actually feature in the race in the end. So it's not necessarily that's your end of day.
No, very, very much so. And we had, perhaps the most extraordinary story of yesterday in terms of cars not qualifying was the number 34 Valkenhorst BMW with Kuba Gamaziak at the wheel in qualifying. He went off of his own admission, his mistake.
Yep.
But Arenberg, I think it was, we're 4 minutes into the qualifying session, and the car rotated and ended up in the gravel, unable to recover it and take part in the session. So he did not qualify. He did not set a time. But the rules here do allow that if a driver, and it is the driver, I'm sure that a team manager will actually write the letter for him, so to speak, because they'll want it worded a certain way.
Okay.
But the driver can apply in extenuating circumstances to the clerk of the course, the race officials, and say, can we take part? Now that comes down to the ring permit, how experienced you are, what level the team is, etc., etc. I'm quite sure. I would suspect if it were your first attempt, you popped in the gravel 4 minutes into a race, you probably wouldn't have got your ring permit in the first place. Somebody like Kuba Gamaziak, they're going to want that car out there. They know they're not going to be silly. So what was permitted was you've applied in writing, permission's been granted, you haven't set a time, therefore you start at the back of the grid effectively. Even more so, you start at the back of that starting group. And by explaining that, here at the Nürburgring, we have 3 starting groups, 1, 2 and 3, different colours, red, yellow and black of the German flag. And the first group, red, has multi-classes in it. So not only do you start at the back of your peer group, you actually go to the back of that grid. So the GT Cup cars in there that you mentioned yesterday was a bit like Porsche Carrera Deutschland at one point.
Yeah.
Now some of those cars we observed were really, really quick yesterday, and up there mixing it among the SB9 GT3 cars. What they were able to do was, which I thoroughly approve of, the organisers sanctioning this, they were able to keep their times. What I mean is, they didn't just put all the SB9 cars that set their times at the front. If you set a time quicker than an SB9 car, that means you're quicker.
Yes.
So take your slot, you've earned it. And I think that's absolutely right. In past, that didn't happen. It used to be category by category.
It did, yeah.
And so for Kuba Gamaziak, what they did was they started at the very back of that group. So you're in all that group of 5 or 6 classes. I think there were 2, I think SB9 and the GT Cup cars, they had 13 each. So there's 26 cars straight off, plus others. So you're 30-odd cars in that first group. They're at the back. They had to come through. What do? They came through. What do? They won it.
Yeah.
So it can be done. Also, the Schnitzel Mercedes, number 11, that car didn't take part. That started from the pit lane. That car was being worked on by engineers as the race started. and still had a great result.
Yeah, well, I really do think a couple of great stints from Colin Karasani, and he battling with Dennis Fetzer in the closing stages was a delight. Actually, Karasani just ran out of steam in the very last few laps, but otherwise Karasani had held back Dennis Fetzer, then he built a gap of 6 or 7 seconds, but then the next time they came round, and this typically happens around such a long lap, it's all changed again, and Fetzer was actually ahead of the Dayglow yellow and black Schnitzelarm Racing Mercedes. But I think those two guys could be ones to watch in the future. We will be getting stints today from Phil Ellis in the number 11 car, who may well start that car, and some more from the 19-year-old Dutchman Colin Karasani. He won't have the Porsches from Falcon, though, to fight with today. Probably there'll be somebody else, another car at a similar speed, though, that those cars will be door handle to door handle with pretty much throughout the duration, because as you say, 6 hours, you would expect maybe the fight to just drift away, but Pro-Am yesterday in SP9 was still pretty much being decided on the final lap between Luca Ludwig in the Ferrari and Christoph Breuer in the Mercedes.
Which leads me nicely to the grid for today. Front row is the car that was out of that race yesterday. The Shearer Sport PHX Audi is on the front row with Frank Schliffler and Vincent Kolb. Alongside it is a Pro-Am car on the front row, not because it's an Aston, because it's a Pro-Am car.
Yes.
More to the point there.
And that is the Christoph Breuer car, by the way. I just called it a Mercedes. It's not a Mercedes. It's an Aston Martin.
Maxime Dumouriez and Marek Borkman in that car. Yesterday's pole position car is also a Pro-Am. That's the Ferrari 296 of Racing One, with Christian Kohlhaas, Stefan Aust and Jakob Schell, which is in hyphen, so we know that's not his real name. Does sound quite interesting. Jakob Schell. Sounds good. That's third.
Well, you've got Shell and Ferrari. I mean, long-time partners.
Indeed. Alongside that is yet another Pro-Am car. So the first 4 cars, we've got a Pro car on the very front, but the next 3 cars are Pro-Am. Mercedes for CP Racing, Charles Putnam, Charles Espinaud, Shane Lewis, and of course Adam Christodoulou in that car. That car was third on the grid yesterday, if I remember, but
yes,
just faded a little bit. Charles Espinaud started that car yesterday, and I was reminded, I thought it was Charles Putnam, the man, as you say quite right, has his name above the door, CP Racing. I thought he normally started the car. Actually, it's Charles Espinaud that normally starts, certainly in the Preventing Hankook 24-hour series, which I'm guessing they're going to. There's certainly the finale next weekend, all live on RSL at Barcelona. And that car will be out there. I'll be amazed if they're not. So 2 back-to-back European races. This is an American-based team. The car is kept here, but they're all Americans. So that's another good showing for that car. And I never really felt that Adam Christodoulou got much of a shot in that car yesterday.
I don't actually remember him being in
exactly.
it.
I'm just saying that. I'm thinking, did he actually drive it yesterday?
Yeah, I'm sure he did, but unfortunately they probably had 1 or 2 dramas along the way, and because it wasn't up in and around the top 6, in fact, it wasn't. Was it in the top 3 Pro-Am? It may have just finished third, but third in Pro-Am represented something like 12th overall, and we may have rather lost track of it. Adam Christodoulou, an adopted American, I suppose, within that team. He has raced with CP Racing before.
They'll give him a passport, or there'll be something. He'll get a baseball or a cap or something. They'll have to be some kind of identifier.
Yes,
such is their sense of humour about that.
That's true. They may have struggled to understand him in the early days, just considering he's from Lichfield, mate. But yes, they know that Adam's talent, particularly when it comes to this place, and the Mercedes 6.2-litre V8 AMG. I mean, Adam is he's raced for Black Falcon before, he's raced for a lot of key teams, in fact, effectively pseudo-factory teams for Mercedes, plus a few years ago. I mean, how long are we talking? When did he become a Nürburgring specialist? It's probably the thick end of a decade now.
Yeah. I've forgotten he was from Lichfield originally.
Yeah,
yeah,
I think that's right. And
where I cut my competition teeth. Here you go. This is one for the UK listeners. First ever official competition was a sprint. So you're going to guess where this is.
Kerbra, yes.
Yeah.
I wonder if Adam Christodoulou has ever done a sprint at Kerbra. That'll be something to ask him next time.
Let's open that.